Prime's The Boys is a satire of superhero shows based on the graphic novel series of the same name. It was written by Garth Ennis and illustrated by Derek Robertson. The Boys is surprisingly progressive and intelligent. It feels in every way like a standard trashy guy show, and certainly the comics it's based on are exactly that. They have a mean-spirited tone and extreme sexism, homophobia, and transphobia. In tone and appearance, they come off as though written by a particularly immature frat boy.
Great start. Really good bones. You write all women as either unknowable Hitchcock bitches or Michael Bay fuck dolls. A little effort would be nice. I got a few more headlines.
However, the adaptation process managed to turn it into a compelling riff on the male-centric action piece that actually critiques toxic masculinity.
I never knew how to save you. You were always one bad day away from pounding someone to death in a parking lot.
Respects its female characters and features nods to feminist discourse.
You want to talk about girl power? Let's talk about getting some pockets.
Features plenty of gay content in a progressive framing.
What, if you're gay or if you're Gandhi, you're going to hell? I mean, that's not immoral. That's human.
And has an overall progressive theme, critiquing corporatism, stardom, American fascism, and police brutality, in the vehicle of critiquing superhero shows. Yet, through it all, the series has been consistently transphobic. I first hand-waved it away as regrettable, but just standard guy show material, born of ignorance. What are you gonna do? However, as the show continues, and transphobia continues to crop up, as topical progressive themes continue to be hammered in,
representation matters.
I have to conclude that one or more of the show's creators is actively transphobic, and deliberately writing in transphobic themes as part of the show's critique of American corruption. This shows up in the transpanic caricature Doppelganger, the feminist persona of Stormfront, a joke about identifying as a race, a dehumanizing discussion of transgender strippers, and an otherwise gay-positive satire about rainbow washing, depicting trans identities as absurd. I don't know exactly who to point fingers at, but I suspect at least one is executive producer/writer Rebecca Sonnenschein, who wrote Stormfront's feminist persona as a TERF, trans-exclusionary radical feminist. Doppelganger, played by Dan Daranzonko, is an extreme caricature riffing on the crying game concept of a man posing as a woman to trick straight men into having sex with him. He is a parody of Mystique from the X-Men movies, a character who is considered to have the true identity of a hot woman, albeit blue and scaly, and can become anyone, including other hot women, largely used as sex appeal for the male gaze. In contrast, Doppelganger's true identity is supposed to be an ugly man, and his assumptions of female personas are framed as deceptive and creepy. His first appearance is as a trap, serving only to illustrate the evil of corporate antagonist Bot. To ensure a straight male politician's compliance, Doppelganger tricks him into sex and takes compromising pictures in his male form. The show tries to frame it as progressive because homophobia is the real problem that allows the black male to work. But it's ultimately about a trans caricature tricking men. The closest thing the show has to trans representation is a gross man who tricks men into having sex with him, wielded by an evil corporation. The Amazon Prime trivia labels Doppelganger as gender fluid and using they-them pronouns. But this has no bearing on how the character is actually treated in the show or by the show creators. Either the person writing the trivia recognized the problematic portrayal and desperately tried to save face, or, more likely, was just making a joke, recognizing that viewers would find the transgender subject absurd and worth parody. In the Season 2 after show, which has actors, writers, and other celebrities discussing the show's progressive themes,
it's also our entire culture, how much of our wealth and how much of our country and all of capitalism and our Constitution is built on abusing people and built on an ideal that white people rule and everybody else is worth 3/5 of a person. It's a question that we really have to contend with right now. Vough's a perfect example of that, you know?
at times feeling more like an activist podcast than discussion of a superhero show. Doppelganger is still discussed as a man who could make himself look like a woman and exclusively referred to with he/him pronouns. No one involved in the production seriously considers him anything other than that.
A middle-aged bald guy. He ends up taking his life.
Homelander couldn't let him live, but Homelander killed him.
Doppelganger. Sorry, dude, wrong place, wrong time. Sorry, bro. Because he's right there. And like you're like, oh my God, he's gonna do it. The money move would have been for him to actually do it.
And then kill him, right?
And then kill him.
In Season 2, main villain Homelander, played by Anthony Starr, gets Doppelganger to perform sex work for him by dressing himself up as Homelander's old beau Madeline, played by Elizabeth Shue. While the persona is maintained across a few scenes, it is ultimately framed as an illusion. Homelander and Doppelganger's relationship is framed as gay, even when Doppelganger is in a woman's form. The character is not treated as gender fluid. When Homelander starts to storm off in narcissistic bluster, Doppelganger transforms into a copy of Homelander to seduce him as himself in a dress. When fans talk about it, it gets framed as bold, experimental, and so progressively queer. But it's not. It's a man in a dress joke. Maybe it would have been progressive 20 years ago, but it's progressive now. The joke is on the absurdity of a man wearing a dress and seriously delivering queer lines as Homelander tries to decide if he's into it or not. And then Homelander kills him. Bury your gays and loosely trans characters. This is not progressive, people.
That is America's ass.
Stormfront, played by Aya Cash, is a secret Nazi who is in love with Homelander and wants to spread her evil far and wide by recruiting him to her cause, in a satire of Donald Trump's relationship with the alt-right. Before she makes it apparent that she's a racist demagogue and the main villain of Season 2, she presents as a progressive modern feminist, likable to the audience as the newest superhero, ready to shake up the establishment. As part of this, she critiques Vought's pandering to women as fake feminism, echoing Rebecca Sonnenshine's anger at Marvel Studios' female pandering scene in Avengers Endgame. Showrunner Eric Kripke has described in detail how Sonnenshine was outraged by Endgame, and how he supported her, essentially pandering to the boss, by including a recurring girls get it done joke throughout the season in satire. As the writer of Season 2, Episode 2, Proper Preparation and Planning, Sonnenshine wrote Stormfront as equally outraged by Vought's fake feminism as Sonnenshine was by Marvel's perceived fake feminism. I personally didn't think it was that bad, but whatever. Whether or not Stormfront ultimately means it, her persona as a feminist represents the sincere beliefs of her writer. Likeable Stormfront is a projected self-insert, a Rebecca Sonnenrod, if you will. And Sonnenshine ended up writing her as a TERF.
Why does it matter whether heroes have a dick or a vag? I don't think girls do anything better. I think chicks and dicks are in it together.
With this statement, Stormfront asserts a model of gender where one's genitals determine their gender, and there can be no trans identity where the brain and genitalia contradict. Her feminism has no room for trans allyship, even when she's actively trying to present as progressive. This is seemingly contrary to what is depicted with Doppelganger, where there is a constant male identity assumed, even when he no longer possesses male genitalia, but transphobes actually conceive of gender identity as immutable and determined by genitalia at birth. Everything else is merely built upon that foundation. Stormfront doesn't go into that detail, but she would presumably agree with it if the question were posed to her. Anyway, transphobes ultimately don't have a rational philosophy, just attempts to justify irrational feelings of repugnance. Some trans-friendly fans have characterized Stormfront's TERF stance as part of her evil, but I don't think there's any reason to think that the show was going for that. The show is detailed, but rarely makes points exclusively in subtext. When Stormfront is racist, the show overtly makes sure you know she is evil for it, and that good guys do not act like that, or stand for it.
Going against your own people?
You mean fucking white people?
Not so with Transphobia. Stormfront is just there as a TERF, and we're supposed to agree with her and like her until the shocking reveal that the woman from Portland with half a skinhead, a German eagle belt buckle, swastika-esque fabric, flag armbands, SS earrings, and the name Stormfront is, in fact, a Nazi.
I did not see that coming from you.
She did that on purpose, obviously.
Historically, Nazis opposed transgender philosophy as representing Talmudic abstraction, a Jewish influence emphasizing the recognition of nuance to make the world more complicated than Christian conservatives find comfortable. Viscerally disturbed by their worldviews being questioned, Nazis tried to simplify the world by ignoring parts of it that bothered them, destroying trans science books and sending queer folks to their deaths. However, in The Boys, the Nazi antagonism toward trans people is not even alluded to. When Stormfront's Nazi evil is depicted, it is only of a racial nature, overtly targeting people of color, and alluding to anti-Semitism.
Frederick had a solution for everything.
And then there's a joke alluding to Rachel Dolezal, the white woman who decided to become a black woman, often wielded as a tool by transphobes to delegitimize trans people, who they characterize as people of one gender, deciding in late life to become another gender, instead of always being their identified gender, and merely seeking to fix birth deformities. While not innately transphobic, this racial joke fits into a general context of transphobia. When a talk show host puts Homelander on the spot over the lack of racial diversity in his superhero team, he starts to talk about his teammate Black Noir, played by black actor Nathan Mitchell, before realizing that with Noir's constant silence and body-obscuring suit, Homelander doesn't know which race Noir actually is. Being the world's biggest jerk, he references it as Noir identifying as a race.
Well, he doesn't identify with any race, really, so they're covered.
The team munition supplier, Frenchie, played by Tomer Capone, is probably bisexual, and one of the ways he is coded as such is his interest in transgender strippers. The implication is that a guy must be into masculinity to find trans femininity attractive, the writers presumably perceiving trans women as overtly masculine at the same time as feminine. However, transition trans women, being women, are, at their most masculine, only about as much as butch lesbians are, and may also be extremely feminine. I'd say the writers have never actually seen any trans women, and are working off of stereotypes derived from drag queens and other displays of cross-dressing. Trans sex workers would not have anywhere near the popularity they have if they only appealed to bi men. The truth is that trans women can just be sexy women. The conversation Frenchie has about them with Mother's Milk, played by Laz Alonso, is also extremely objectifying, centering the stripper's presumed male genitalia, and using the presence of such for comedy. MM is, as Honest Trailers puts it, extremely into his girlfriend, later wife, and dismisses any interest in strippers, trans or cis. That would be progressive for depicting trans women as acceptable as strippers, and MM having a higher level objection to the concept, but they feel the need to swing back around and make a joke about male genitalia to objectify and other trans sex workers.
Strippers ain't really my kind of Hershey's, with or without nuts.
Finally, in one of the VNN Fox News parody videos, released over the hiatus between seasons 2 and 3, there's a joke about trans identities being asserted by Vought as part of its corporate exploitation of gay, lesbian, and bisexual people. Season 2 has a subplot about Homelander outing Queen Maeve, played by Dominique McElligott, as in a relationship with a woman, and Vought consequentially exploiting this with a biphobic rainbow washing campaign. Maeve is bi, but Vought thinks it would be controversial to admit that bi people exist, and could threaten their ratings, so they lie and characterize her as an out and proud lesbian. Ultimately preoccupied with marketing, they stick her lesbian branding on products that have nothing to do with being gay, in a satire of real-world rainbow washing.
Would you like to try our new Brave Maeve Rainbow Veggie Burger?
At a time when rainbow washing is largely understood by straight people as simple gay friendliness, and controversial in the gay community, not to mention biphobia being off of almost everyone's radar, this pointed satire is remarkable, and indicates a creative force on the pulse of gay discourse. And it is still transphobic.
Done by Vought to benefit the local youth communities through their inclusive Explore Your Pronouns, Boys, Girls, Trans, and Non-Binary summer camps.
Okay, at this point, it is clear that this is not just born of ignorance, but is modern transphobic propaganda. It is mocking the concept of choosing alternate pronouns, trans identities, the concept of transgender children, and even the acronym LGBTQ+. This is the modern battleground of TERFs, and is specifically reminiscent of their campaign to drop the T from LGBT, as has resulted in LGB Alliance, a British TERF-run anti-trans hate group presenting as a gay rights organization. They have put pressure on British political institutions and inserted themselves in the media under the pretense of protecting gay people, but are specifically targeting trans people, delegitimizing non-binary gender identities, and trying to withhold medical care from trans children, and promote their subjection to traumatic conversion therapy. The depiction of a trans-inclusive children's club as wacky nonsense exploiting LGB people positively smacks of the modern TERF political agenda. I suspect this TERF stance of the show is derivative, at least in part, from Rebecca Sonnenschein. I've read her objection to the in-game pandering scene, and it strikes me as way overblown and indicative of radical feminist oversimplification. That plus her writing likable Stormfront as a TERF makes me think that she's likely an aggressive TERF herself.
We start Stormfront as like this fun character who's like a truth teller that does sound appealing, especially to Starlight as somebody who may have ideas about how to be a stronger person and to get more of her own self into what she's doing instead of hiding behind. And then we just quickly start twisting it, but we have to lay all the seeds so that we're taking the audience on the journey, because it's the seduction of the audience the same way that these personalities seduce regular people.
Whether the problem ends with her, or she's just the most overt element of it, is unclear, but I'm currently not loving her inclusion in the show production. As we approach the release of Season 3, I find myself growing apprehensive. I do like the show, but I anticipate its transphobia only increasing as a means of indoctrinating progressive-minded individuals against the trans cause. And that's a shame, because the show really has some great themes and characters. To some extent, it actually challenges cis-heteronormativity, with its jokes positively comparing men to the Spice Girls.
When they're apart, they're absolute fucking rubbish. You put them together, they're the goddamn fucking Spice Girls.
And the Golden Girls.
So you're Betty White?
Oh, what a fucking question. Of course I'm Betty White.
But I'm sure that the TERF element in the production will keep it from ever reaching anything that's truly trans-positive. And that's a real shame.